like it. I like it. Hello, everybody.
Oh my gosh, look at some of the old gang is here.
Old friends.
Excellent.
I see
Well,
Yeah.
Bill.
hi. Welcome everyone. We're so happy to have you here this evening to talk about MFA writing, talk about artist statements. I'm Jeff Johnston. I'm the Assistant Director of Grad Admissions here at CCA. I am going to be here just to help with the chat. So if you do have questions during the presentation, I'll be happy to help you out with those. Anything I can't answer, of course, we have some great presenters here tonight. And really quick, I did also want to say that, you know, there's a lot of different time zones being represented here. And so if you want to be on camera, great. If not, don't worry. But we are going to be recording this tonight for prosperity and for
Prosperity.
posting online.
Posterity.
Posterity, excuse me. But I am going to turn it over here to my colleague Dave Murray so he can introduce himself real quick, and then we will get this thing rolling.
Hi, everybody. This will be super short, just underscoring what Jeff said. I am Dave Murray. I work with Jeff in the Grad Admissions Office, and we're here to answer any questions you might have that go beyond the purview of the writing program and the expertise in writing your statement as represented by your faculty here tonight. So again, feel free to drop that in the chat to us anytime, and there will be a time for question and answer at the end as well, where you can engage live. So thanks all for joining, and I'll turn it over to our hosts here.
Hey, hello, everybody. Good evening. It's so great to see some folks we know, some new names out there. I am Jasmine Darznik. I'm chair of the MFA writing program at California College of the Arts. And tonight we have my amazing colleague, Faith Adiele. I mean, this woman is a force. And I reckon if you are looking to write an artist statement, personal statement, whether it's for grad applications or fellowship opportunities or anything, I mean, this is the person I would go to. Faith is just she's such a terrific writer. She's a superb personal essayist, and I think she's going to get you thinking about the personal statement, the artist statement, in new ways, thinking of it as a really a creative exercise, creative venture. And so I'm so grateful that Faith signed on to help us out with this. Just really quickly, we're taking applications. If you're looking to apply, or you know someone who might want to, the priority deadline is January the 15th. But we take applications beyond that. Definitely come to CCA, says Faith. Yeah, that's it. That's all there is to say about it. Yeah, and we'll be having more events through the spring, but this is a series of presentations with our faculty. This is the fourth one, and we might do some more in the spring, but it's a chance for us to get to know you and for you to get to know us. So I'm gonna introduce Faith a little bit formally. Again, the woman's so extraordinary. I gotta make sure that I get it all covered. So briefly but formally, Faith Adiele writes and speaks about race, culture, and travel. She's the author of Meeting Faith, a memoir about ordaining as Thailand's first Black Buddhist nun. This memoir won the PEN Open Book Award and routinely appears on listicles. Her media credits include Sleep Stories, which appear on the Calm app. They are amazing. 2 episodes of A World of Calm, which appeared on HBO Max, and the documentary My Journey Home, which was produced by PBS. That was about finding her family in Nigeria. Faith is also she's the founder of the nation's first writing workshop for travelers of color. She has been teaching at California College of the Arts. Gosh, I think about, is it 15 years or so? I'm thinking oh God, the face. Yeah. It's been a robust number of years, and she leads writing workshops all around the world. So terrific colleague, wonderful writer, and again, so happy to have you here, Faith.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Thanks everyone who put this together. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to see people I know and don't know and want to know, et cetera, et cetera. That's always so exciting about doing these things. I really appreciate that. And you should feel free to throw stuff in the chat. I love like a vibrant, exciting chat. And I can actually multitask and watch the chat and talk at the same time. But so I would love to, if you just throw in like kind of what you're interested, why you're here. I tried to do this really broadly so we could hit MFA applications, artist residency applications, and grant applications. But I am always flexible, so feel free to throw in particular questions or tell me to slow down because I tend to get super excited and try to like everything I know and more. So we are going to get started, and there's going to be some interactivity as well. I did a PowerPoint because if you know me, you know I love a PowerPoint so bad. I even did a love story as a PowerPoint. So here we get going. So make it make sense. Okay, so just so you know who's in the room, I'm a professor, I'm chair of the undergraduate program, I'm a writer, I take mentoring very, very seriously, and this is one of the ways I mentor. I'm very addicted to artist residencies, and I've had over 20 of them around the world, and I did do a talk last year that's on our website, on our YouTube channel about applying to residencies. And then I'm also a judge and juror for all sorts of things, so I get lots of opportunities to be judgy. MFA applications, residency applications, NEA grants, that sort of thing. And so that's a lot of where these ideas are coming from. So is this clear? Is this showing up well on the screen? Okay, good. So basically, what is a personal artist statement? Because there is the artist statement that is associated with art exhibitions. So I just wanted to clarify what I mean by artist statements. And so generally, and it's a little different also from the personal statement you use to get into an undergraduate school. But generally, in the world that we're talking about here, it's an introduction to you and your work that supplements the other things that go in your application. So you'll have your creative work, you'll have your statement, your project that you're going to work on, you'll have a CV or a resume, but this artist statement is equally important because it does this thing. And so it's not merely a resume in narrative form. And it's also not an opportunity to kind of plead your case or to write kind of an academic dissertation about yourself, or be very, very personal. It's this balance of professional and personal, but it should give a kind of a snapshot of who you are, kind of the potential of your work in your field, to draw the reader in to want to know more about you and your work and tell a story. So that's all you got to do. But like any good writing, it tells a story. And so that's really what we're going to be looking at. The things that I want to focus on are thinking about statements as another part of the creative aspect. It's not just the writing sample or the artistic sample you include. The statement itself is a creative piece of work. It's an artistic thing. And so we're going to approach it as creative opportunities. We're going to quickly hit what the elements of a successful statement are and how we hit that right balance of personal and professional so that people feel as though you've really kind of engaged them, but you are also showing professional standards. Talk briefly about what committees generally are looking for. And then the thing that I'm most interested in, and the reason I wanted to do this talk, was how to present non-traditional paths or any gaps in your experience or education, and tips for turning what you may consider weaknesses into strengths. I've been out talking to lots of people who say, oh, it's too late for me to be a writer or an artist, or I don't have this, I don't have that. And so that's what I'm really passionate about, how the things that you think might be weaknesses are in fact potentially strengths that will make you unique. And then I'm hoping that since you're all experts in some way, that we can, share questions and experience, and you can, contribute to blind spots that I have. I'm going to ask Jasmine to do that as we go along as well. So far, so good. Is this a speed that we can process at? Okay, good. So the three types of statements that I'm going to be talking about here first are for the MFA program. And I looked, so this is based on CCA's application, which is generally a personal essay of 500 to 1,000 words, which is a clear statement of your writing experience, why you want to go to graduate school and writing at this point, what your educational objectives are, and any critical influences on your work. And of course, we're always looking for, people who are really engaged with their craft and field and reading widely. And it doesn't even necessarily be books. Your influences might be, extra literary, it might be, all sorts of arts or other things. But that's generally what most MFA statements are about. When you go for residencies, which are places that you go, artists and writers go for anywhere from 2 weeks to several months, have a room of your own, a studio where you can work on a project. And that's really one of the best ways to subsidize an art habit. They range from 500 to 1,000 words. Some of them are as vague as tell us about yourself and your work. I found a lot of those and I'm like, oh, that would be really hard. Some of them phrase it as a letter of intent, in which you would cover your practice, what project you were going to work on while you're in residence, and why this residency would benefit your work at this stage. And that comes up a lot. And that's one of the things that we're going to be thinking about, why everything up to this moment has led you to need this particular opportunity right now. And that's very compelling in a statement. And then another one is like a short description of the project you'd like to do, discuss your work and artistic goals in a personal as well as a critical context. And that can be hard to think about your work in a critical way. Oftentimes we can say what we're interested in personally, but then how do we kind of pull back and think of how does it fit in the larger context? Who are you in conversation with? If someone was teaching your work later, like what genre, what importance would they, convey? And so it's a great opportunity to be thinking about those things, but we're often kind of weak in those areas. Yes, it might feel like bragging, but those are the types of residency applications. As I've said, I've been to more than 20, but those are the kinds of personal statements that come up. And then the third one is like the larger grant applications. And I pulled the Fulbright because to me, that's kind of the Cadillac of grant applications. You can, if you work on a Fulbright grant application, you have all the elements you need for everything else. And I tend to have statements of different sizes on my computer. If you have a 500, you have 1,000, you have a project statement, you have a personal statement, you're ready to apply for everything. So that I think it's good to kind of prepare for every eventuality. So the Fulbright, which is pretty exhaustive, is one full page. That's a picture of yourself as an individual, and it suggests all sorts of things: personal history, family background, influences, opportunities, or the lack thereof, which I think is really interesting because then they're saying, as I said, what you might see as lacking is actually is interesting to your narrative. And the ways in which these experiences have affected your personal growth. So already they're signaling that they want a story, how you've grown from what you've been exposed to or not been exposed to. And then you kind of side things that you're interested in. And then they specify this should not be a recording of facts already in the application or another version of the grant proposal of what you're going to do. It's a biography, but it's more interesting. It's not just like a listing of CV of this happened and this happened and this happened. Again, it's a narrative, it's a story, and then it supports why you want to do this project. So it's a shaped story, almost like a memoir, that then will support what it is that you want to do with your grant application. So any questions so far? Sakatar NEA. Yeah, exactly. I've applied to Sakatar. I can talk about that. Yeah, very good. Okay, so some general things that committees look for. MFA. Yes, MFA. Trust me, no MFA program cares that you've been writing since you were in diapers and have always loved books. The minute I read that, and I read that multiple times a year, I fall asleep. So essentially, everyone says that. And what I think I'm looking for, and Jasmine, you can weigh on this. I want someone who's curious about the world. And maybe that means they read, maybe it means they look for a narrative elsewhere. who has something passionate they want to say. They may not have the skills yet, but they have something interesting to say. And they believe in apprenticeship. So they don't think they know it all. They want to work on craft. They want to be in community. They want to get feedback. They want to give feedback. They want to work with someone. They like the process of learning. How about you, Jasmine? What would you say?
No, I like that all so much. I think that, I mean, we can talk about this a little bit later, but when there's some things that we see over and over again, like I've been writing since I was small. I love books. And the thing to keep in mind is really, it's like any piece of writing. How can you distinguish yourself? How can you make this a memorable portrait of yourself that would be, it would be impossible for someone else to put forth this statement, right? That it speaks so much of you and to who you are, that that it's going to stand out, and it's going to be memorable for that reason. Something else I would say, looking at these three different kinds of opportunities with MFA programs, also tailoring the statement to address what's attractive about the particular program you're applying
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And we see statements a lot of times that feel like they have been written and they're probably being sent to 10 programs, the same statement as being, and we get it. You have to be efficient with your time, and the substance of what you're going to present may be the same, but definitely I would think a little bit about who's at this program. Why are you drawn to it in particular? And you want that beautiful, like, how do your interests mesh with the strengths and opportunities at this program? And for sure, double and triple and quadruple check that you don't refer to other programs, because that happens a lot, and the more you can demonstrate that you've done your research, maybe you're going to name a few professors whose work you've gotten to know, and you're going to demonstrate that this is somebody who's really given this thought.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. We also get so many that are just like, clearly they want to be in California. It's like, that's great, but like, pay a little attention to like what we have going on here in the Bay Area and literarily, and talk about it in that way, is so yeah, really doing a little research. And that's the same with the residencies too, that one, they want somebody who's going to complete the project or make headway on the project that they said they were going to do. So it needs to be reasonable and that you'll credit them. But also they're looking for someone who's really paid attention to what the residency is. So like, if it's in the middle, if it's the middle of nowhere and you're going to be by yourself, you might want to talk about how that's going to work for you. And they're not going to have to come and like, remove you because you freaked out. Or if it's like a big communal one and they want people who like share cooking and do all that stuff, then you'll be like, I'm all about that. I'm from the Bay Area. That's all I do. So really think about how you're going to fit into that community, not just that, you're just doing this generic thing. So, and then with grants, I think they're really looking for something to invest in. So either the project itself is compelling and you're the only person who can accomplish it, or you're a real promising person and they want to invest in your career. Again, as with the residency, you want a clear plan that can be accomplished in the time frame that you set. And then that idea of why now? Like, this is the moment, you've taken it as far as you can, you've done as much, you've done all this background stuff, and now is the moment you need support, and you need this particular support. And then that becomes very compelling. And that comes up both in the statement, the grant statement, but also in your kind of personal statement of why I'm ready now to take this step. And I'm a good thing, I'm a good investment at this point. Okay, so this is a thing I think that comes up a lot. So what if you don't fit, you don't fit the mold? Hallelujah is what I say. I love people who don't fit the mold. And so I picked three little segments here that are kind of student work, but then I shifted them around to kind of give a sense of ways that you could talk about yourself. So the first one, I'm interested in how the author balances her personal voice with her professional expertise. So she's both lyrical, but she's also, establishing herself as an authority. I grew up among the rain-soaked, drippy forests of the Pacific Northwest. Nature inspires me, especially the details. Secret braille spores on the undersides of ferns, a droopy nurse log, and the bright sapling thriving on top of it, an empty nest and the cracked egg on the ground below. My goal is to publish popular fiction that challenges how humans think about the world and reveals some small noticing that helps us achieve a greater understanding of our part of the larger ecosystems. So she has this real, very kind of science, sort of thing that she wants to do, but she gives me a sense of what her writing is going to be like and her just kind of lyrical eye. And then the fact that it's paired with she wants to write popular fiction makes me really interested, because I was like, oh, it's not going to be, just this kind of, it's not going to be super science writing, and it's not going to be just lyrical poetry. She's going to try to meld these into something. And so I, really liked that moment that she could fly into a flight of fancy, but then she'd come down to something really specific for it. The next one I thought was a good example of how you could take work and other experiences to kind of support your literary goals. You might not have literary experiences, but bringing those in. So she says, in 2020, I received my BA in sociology from the university, where I studied social justice movements around the globe. Immediately after, I went on to work at Amazon's corporate office, and I credit my 2 years there with influencing the anti-capitalist philosophy and main character in my science fiction manuscript. And so she was saying, like, oh, I haven't written much, but I'm just like, this is amazing. Your original studies and your work experience really helped create the world in the book. And the book felt so real because it was layered, even though it was happening on a planet that, a planet that she had made up. All the characters and all the interactions seemed very, very possible because it was based on that. And so I said, don't be ashamed that you worked at Amazon. I mean, be ashamed that you worked at Amazon, but you're using it for good. So, and then the final one we see a lot is people have personal interests and they say, I want to explore, I'm interested in, and I'm like, that's great, but then how do you open up the personal to larger? How do you make it universal? How do you make it relevant to other people so that someone's not just kind of funding your inward looking? So this student said, by the time I graduated high school, I called 17 different places, apartments, cities, states, home. My poetry collection explores poverty and homelessness in my family, using it to visualize the realities of those whose precarious existence renders them invisible. So using the personal narrative to talk about something larger. And for me, that's always compelling because she's being forthcoming, but I'm learning about a whole kind of segment of society. And so it gives it that gravitas and importance. Does that make sense? Okay, so I can't see anyone except for Jasmine. So, okay. So then I have two examples that are kind of interactive that I'm asking you to get invested with me. So the idea is I talked to somebody because I teach this class called What to Do with Your MFA. So I had students starting to write statements and they were like, oh, I don't, again, they were coming out with negatives, things they didn't have. So for me, the idea was to then take their story and reframe it so that you could never talk about a weakness. You could never undercut yourself. You had to reframe everything as positive. You had to use active verbs. And so I'm going to read this, and then I want you to think about what are the actual strengths that the candidate is not giving themselves credit for, and what's the story in here. So I haven't taken many literature or writing classes. I haven't published anything. I studied pre-med to please my immigrant parents and did a lot of journaling. During the pandemic, I realized I don't have the temperament for medicine. In fact, the only thing that kept me sane was working on my sci-fi novel. I would disappear into these worlds I was building. Now I realize I need to learn craft to turn my scribblings and mapping into something people might want to read. So does anyone have any idea of what some strengths were that are hidden in there that we could be writing about? You can throw it into the chat or unmute.
They know themselves and they're going for their passion.
They're going for the passion.
Mhm.
Yep. Thank you. Driven to write despite the odds. It's lots of discipline.
There's that
Yeah.
Sorry,
And-
willingness to be an apprentice that you were
Yeah.
talking about. So I realize I need to learn.
Right. Yeah. When you love that. I mean, when you get an MFA application that someone's like, I want to work on craft, we're like, hallelujah, come on down. I mean, they've got a project that they want to work on that they're already deep in. And so that's a higher indicator of success. They're not coming without anything, but they're coming to write, with the project already in place, which is have a much higher indication of success, driven by inner passion and imagination. Exactly. Right.
And there's
Very-
also Claire is saying it takes a lot of courage to go your own way.
Right. Exactly. And they tried it, they tried to please their immigrant parents. They know where they're coming from. They're very humble. And then I like the idea that they studied pre-med. Well, obviously that's going to inform this sci-fi world that they're thinking about as well. So again, that's another strength that they may think like, oh, I haven't done much writing, but they've done dreaming and they've done scientific study. Right. Exactly. Pre-med can provide a different perspective. Yeah, I'm going to be so excited to read about someone who came from pre-med, and then something as important as the pandemic made them switch course and do a story that really meant something to them, right? There's high stakes in this journey, in this personal journey.
Mhm.
And so there's a great story in here, and there are a lot of strengths that the person is not even aware of. So great. Does that make sense to everyone? Already building worlds. Exactly. So great. Thank you. If they have immigrant parents, they will have no problem receiving negative feedback. Oh my God, Billy, that is so true. That is hilarious.
Oh my God.
So
Both Faith and I have immigrant parents, so
great. Words have never been spoken. We should just hire an immigrant mom to come in and be like, what's wrong with you?
maybe we could get your mom to come in.
My mom's the wrong person. She'd be all like, everyone should be writers. I'm proud of you all.
Aw.
She's not a very good immigrant. She's like, everyone, yeah. Okay, that's great. Thanks. Solidarity. Okay, so then the next one is, I've been taking classes at the local college and I'm much older than the other students. Sometimes I feel embarrassed that I don't know literary terms with authors they all know. I really have to catch up, but I absolutely love everything we're reading. I spend my adult life running a business and raising my kids, but after the election, I realized I need to do more to leave a better world for them. I've been doing DNA and historical research for a cycle of stories I want to write. So what's this character's strength and what's the story? What could they write about?
They have a vision and a purpose and a mission.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Exactly. Oh yeah, and the thing that's not clear in here is that person actually moved across the country, just like left their life, left their business, moved across the country when they did come to CCA. Right. So again, high stakes. If you're willing to leave being a successful business person to, because you've decided that you need to create a better world through writing for the next generation, that's someone we want to read, right? Yeah. A legacy, willingness to learn. They're older, but they're humble. Curiosity brings a fresh, less jargony approach. Exactly. They're not using that, that lit language, that literary theory language that makes us so tired. Like they're reading books as if they are pathways to how to change the world, right? There's just like they're reading with their hearts on their sleeve. Being older, great perspective. And of course, you want all different ages in the classroom too. Life experience as a business owner and parent, right? They're going to approach things in a real different way. Self-motivated and organized. Exactly. And they could be really helpful for younger students who are like having difficulty, balancing and multitasking and stuff like that. And they know what they want to write. Exactly. So yeah, so these are the kinds of things I see all the time. So when you start to tell yourself these things, then just think about like, wait a minute, if I won't, don't allow yourself to write any negatives, but just think about what is the potential in my non-traditional path? What is it that I bring based on what I've done and that I'm good at? All of these different jobs, being a parent is like a million jobs, a million skills that you can bring to writing. So all of these things, it's just a matter of reframing.
Okay, what about the older thing?
Mm-hmm. Being old in art school, which is the name of the book.
There's a book with that title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being old is great. I mean, being old, we have all ages. I went to grad school when I was 35, and most people were younger. They were straight out of undergrad. And I rarely advocate for applications where someone is straight out of undergrad. I'm always looking for someone who's been out for a while, and if they've been out for a long time, I'm super excited about it. What do you think, Jasmine?
Totally true. Right now we have a student who's, I'm not going to say her name. She's 80 years old, and she is so dynamic. I mean, she's really in there, and she's ready. She's been waiting all her life to be where she is now, and comes with so much life experience, of course, and adore her. And that's one end of the spectrum. And then we've got people who come. I also got my MFA when I was in my mid-30s, and we have a number of people who are in that kind of spot in life. And I think it all makes for a more dynamic mix. I would not say at all that I don't see it as a negative. If anything, it's an asset.
Yeah, I think it's an asset. It's not like gymnastics. You can't age out of writing, so it's really, you can do it at any time, and having that level is great. So yeah.
Our assistant director of grad admissions Jeff says he was 38 when he went to grad school, and it helped. Yes, absolutely. Education is wasted on the very young. Yeah, I mean, you get out there, you work a while, that you realize how, I mean, it really is such an extraordinary thing to give 2 years to writing. And I think you really appreciate that.
I went to Iowa, which was a very, very high stakes thing. And the folks who had come directly out of undergrad were super freaked out because they didn't have much to write about to start with. They were amazing wordsmiths, but they hadn't had much life experience, which is not to say young people can't, but they just had fairly kind of sheltered private school, Ivy League, and then come to Iowa. And they just were so freaked out that they weren't going to get like major book deals and be like in the top of the class. And they didn't have much to write, and they were just really, I mean, they were the ones who were, acting up. And people who had been out in the world and knew why they came and had projects to work on and knew how rare it was to have 2 years to write didn't have time for that nonsense. They were like so excited. They were like, this is so much better than real life, that they were like embracing it fully. And so it was a lot easier for those who were older. So I think it's great. Older's better, or not better, but it can be very good. Yay, good. Feel better. So so if you think about a statement as a creative opportunity, both for kind of reframing, many writers tend to be depressed anyway, so reframing is super important for our mental health, but just in general, and kind of creating the narrative. So if you can just think of yourself as like a character, if you're someone who writes prose, you're probably crafting characters anyway. And so, kind of think about, who are you and who do you want to be? And what are the kind of interesting reversals in your journey, which doesn't mean you have to have had a victim narrative, but we all kind of, coming of age always involves kind of hitting a wall and having to make a choice and having your values tested and figuring out what matters to you, whether or not it's overcoming loss or maybe it's travels or, different moments and experiences that formed you, books you read that blew your mind and you want to be in conversation with that genre and that author, what kind of contribution you want to make to your field and how you imagine that. Are you getting like weird feedback that no one understands what you're trying to do and you're kind of trying to push through to something? Or you can think about the journey of the project itself. Like, what is that backstory? Did you walk away from a career to do it? That's part of the story. Did it save your mental health? Did it ruin your relationship because you were always talking to your characters and not to your partner? You have any sort of interesting, non-traditional experience. A friend of mine just got a huge book deal, and part of her story was, she went to Kashmir to do research for the book, but you can't be doing research in an occupied country. And so she was with these filmmakers and they were filming secretly for her, but she pretended that they were doing some sort of kind of mermaid thing. So she went everywhere with the big mermaid tail. And whenever they were followed by the police, they would like wave the giant mermaid tail. The publisher loved this backstory and was like, that was part of the thing that got her the book deal. It was just this interesting back channel to all the research she did to then create a fictional novel based on, because it's not really safe to write nonfiction about Kashmir. So essentially your statement should tell the story of your journey and of you and enhance your creative project. So just think about where they intersect, where you and the project's journey intersect for what it is you want to do. So so then if you don't know where to get started, I was thinking of a brainstorming exercise that we might want to do, which is just, take 5 minutes to think about why you do what you do. Why do you make art or write, and who or what inspires you? What are your topics, themes, and techniques, and how do they engage with the world? What are your goals and aspirations as an artist? And then just kind of jot down some words and phrases that kind of come to mind. We'll take one more minute. Okay, so that's the end of the formal part. 26 of those essays. Wow. So what came up for you? Is there anything you want to share with that? Or I'm also happy to answer questions. Give specific advice on specific applications. But first of all, did anything come up with your brainstorming? Hey, Celeste.
Hey, thanks for offering this.
Hey.
Hi.
Celeste is a great resource, actually. Celeste wins all sorts of grants. So you should be teaching this class.
Oh no, I'm learning with everyone here and really appreciate this. Yeah.
My name is Rebecca, and what came up for me is that I feel like
Sorry.
I don't that like to know the things in this question will be kind of like having a personal brand,
Mm.
and I just don't feel like I'm there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the statements I didn't include was a student talking about, I write to find out the things I don't know. And so also maybe sometimes it's an approach. There are things that you're puzzling through, the things you're drawn to. And I think often, like, I didn't know my brand until enough people had read my stuff and are like, oh, you do this, you do that. Like, we often don't see like the patterns and stuff like that, but at least maybe if you start to pay attention to kind of what are the curiosities you have, or who are the people you like to read, or why do you find yourself writing and stuff like that, that's self-reflection will kind of reveal more. I often did not know kind of my obsession with like structure and kind of what techniques I was using. I didn't have like a language for it. And again, it's like then having other people read it and be like, oh, you should read so-and-so, or you're doing, X, Y, and Z. And then I'd start to kind of acquire a language to describe myself from other people. I don't know, other people have suggestions for how they kind of develop these answers?
I have a tip on this, if I may.
Of course.
Because I also struggle with that. It's so hard to kind of turn the camera and, turn that critical lens on yourself and put yourself within a conversation, a framework, a critical discourse. I mean, all of that is really hard, no matter what stage you're at. So one way I have learned is by reading, maybe it's literary criticism or interviews or appreciation. Poets and Writers is a resource I often go to, where they will do profiles of authors, and I'm paying attention to how authors I admire are being talked about in these different situations. And of course, you're not pulling direct language, but you're beginning to notice patterns. And you're borrowing the language until you have a clearer sense of who you are. You're borrowing the language from maybe some of these other sources. So those are a few places I might go looking if you don't feel you're yet, you're not really comfortable situating yourself within a framework or talking in a more critical way about your writing and your work.
Right.
Maybe it's also just like trying to get the right answer or figure out what's popular or what's trendy and or what's not, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about that. I mean, it depends what your goal for writing is. I mean, if you want to be writing commercial stuff that sells, then I guess you do have to worry about that. But I think in general, when people talk about finding your voice, it's really the things that you're drawn to, the things that you have to write, because writing pretty much anything is easier. I mean, like Netflix is there. So like, why would you write if you could like watch Netflix, like, or hang out with friends, right? So we usually write because we can't not write. So, what are the things, that are drawing you? I wouldn't worry too much. I think if you do the thing that you're passionate about, that then you'll create the audience for that, or the audience will find you. But again, if you've got a different reason for doing it and you want to kind of tap into, the zeitgeist, there are workshops on that sort of thing, where people who, have like all sorts of tips about, what people are reading and stuff like that, or, what is selling. Thing. So, is it okay to quote other writers in an application essay? Yes. Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that people, particularly in MFA programs, people get excited when applicants talk about who they're reading. That's where I get judgy. If you're giving me if you're giving me a list of people that are of all one gender or race, I'm not going to be particularly impressed. But in general, I like, we like to see people who are like really inspired by, in conversation with, write back against, write in conversation with. You just want to make sure that it's not like the most commonly quoted phrase, so that you sound like you don't know, a cliche, or like I just had a student turn in something and she was like quoting Chimamanda's Dangers of Another, the Danger of a Single Story, and I was like everyone quotes The Danger of a Single Story, tends to be white people quoting The Danger of a Single Story, and you're talking about horses. I was like, no, find something else. That can't be the stand-in for for everything. It can't be like virtue signaling or something like that. So if, find me something that's like new and exciting about, people who write about horses, and then it will kind of make more sense. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting to, see how your brain is working, and, who you're reading and talking to. Great. Yeah, Angela.
Hi, thanks. I was just in terms of what came up for me when I got to question number 4, and I think this is across the board. Anytime I'm asked to, so what are your goals and aspirations, like as a writer? And I guess my question is, I was like, oh, I want to publish. I write memoir, personal essay, and I'm new-ish at it. I'm interested in going to a residency. And I think one of the things I think about is like, how do I, if I don't know exactly what I want to do I want to publish some things for sure. I definitely want to publish my memoir. I want to publish some essays along the way. But how to make it, and I think as in memoir, it's like, how do I make it not feel so like navel gazing? Like, here's the things I want to do. And I want to come and do this so I can practice more. And, it just doesn't feel like it has any appeal beyond myself.
Right.
Or like, I want to be in conversation with my readers, but I also I'm new to the writing world. So I don't have like, oh, I want to win this award, or I don't know if I want to go to an MFA program. I want to write. That's what I want to do. So I don't know if you have any thoughts.
I actually think that's kind of refreshing, right? Like, I want to write, or I want to, I want to develop my craft. There are stories that I want to tell. I mean, one of the things is to think about your audience, and I don't mean think about your market audience. Like when I'm trying to teach people about their voice, I think, who is the person that you're leaning into to talk to? Like, is it, for me, it's like the little weird Nordic Nigerian girl on a farm who didn't know there were any other people in the world like her. Like, that's kind of who I'm writing to, you know? So it's like, who do you really want to read your story? Like, and so that's kind of it, you know, is it young Black girls? Is it people who have gone through similar experiences that you're writing about in your memoir? That could, you know, for me, like getting the craft to be able to tell the stories that aren't necessarily told as much, like aren't part of the mainstream, and really kind of reaching them. I think that can help you kind of focus your passion. If you think about like, who do you really want to be talking to? It's not like a generic reader. I want all people to read my work. Sure, that would be great to be a bestseller, but really thinking about what drives you to do this, and what are these, I think particularly with memoir, right? I mean, we're trying to work something out, but as we realize our own personal story, the more we write it, we know our personal story is in fact universal, right? It's commenting on other things. If we share things that are hard, maybe we can afford solace to other people and they'll think that they're not alone. So there are those things that can kind of maybe drive it. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. It does. Thank you.
Angela, I also want to say that think about why you read, right? I mean, probably the answer to why you write is embedded in why you read, what you read. I think there are clues there. What kind of authors are you drawn to? What do they give you? You know, maybe just mine that a little bit. Think about your reading life, and I bet you're going to find some clues about why you write.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Hey, Arena. Your hand is up.
Oh, can you wait? Could you not hear me?
I didn't hear anything before, just this when you said, can you not?
I was just saying hi. Thank you so much for the conversation. I just wanted to ask, when I was doing my research and kind of like browsing for examples, I stumbled upon this one very interesting personal statement from, I believe, Mark Bauman, or I will be happy to link it to the chat, but he started his application, Dear Mother, and then he wrote about how he's going to Brown, and even if Brown doesn't accept him, and it was very long, and then he went on to write some kind of a poem addressed to Brown, how he cocaine, but through like reading the poem, it really felt like he does do cocaine. But you know, it was just a very interesting structure to personal statement. So I was wondering, what are your kind of like opinion on it? And yeah, I don't know. I was very struck by it. So I was just curious. I've never seen anything like it.
Interesting. I'm gonna give that one to Jasmine.
I was just typing in the chat. Did he get in?
Oh yeah, I mean he did.
He get in. Okay.
He passed away at like very young age, and New Yorker wrote about it. So he became an established writer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean it is tricky because you could alienate people. I mean, go get too creative. You know, maybe there is such a thing as too creative in this enterprise. I mean, here we are talking about him. I've never heard about him, but this is very memorable. I was talking about being memorable. I think so. A couple thoughts. One is that I do think you got to take a risk, and that could be about risking telling something honest and true about yourself, risking saying something unpopular or strange or different about writing, some kind of risk about some kind of risk really energizes a statement. And then the other thing I was going to say is I think style also really energizes. So it sounds like this guy really brought a lot of style, and he made it into you know, quite the creative endeavor. But you might you might not go that far, and I would probably counsel you not to go quite as far as this author did, but you could definitely push it way past what we've seen. I mean, Faith and I, over the years, often the statements are so interchangeable. So be voicey, be strange, address it. I think some of what you're talking about really sounds exciting to me, because it sounds like this is a person who's willing to take risk, and that's somebody I would love to know and learn with.
Yeah, I think, yeah. And I actually didn't put that in my stuff, but yeah, talking about voicing, that's great. This is actually a really beautiful, beautiful piece. I mean, it's so meta and stuff like that.
Are you reading it right now?
Yeah, I'm reading it. It's great. I love it. Kind of stuff I love. So not the cocaine, but just the structure. We hear people talk about mental health and neurodivergence all the time in these statements. Art, CCA said, we don't say that we're creating a safe space, but we're creating a brave space. That that's our motto is, make art that matters, and that we're creating brave spaces. And there's an incredible amount of I think awareness of neurodivergence and mental health issues, and so that's nothing unusual at all. I do get students or applicants who are like, is it okay to write about X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, girl, boy, I've seen everything. There are no taboos about what you can write about it in the classroom. So I think the only thing is, like, I did have examples in the artist residency statement that if you lean in too hard around mental health, that might give residency committees concern, because if you are in an isolated situation at a residency, could you possibly, could that possibly be too much pressure, and could it end up being problematic? So so there's a way in which you have to kind of, I think, show that is part of something you write about, that how to take care of yourself, and so I think that's the only kind of risk, I think, involved in being out. What would you say to that, Jasmine?
I think that's true. I for sure have read several applications where people are talking about mental health. It's something that I believe very strongly, about writing about that. So I am very open to working with students who have that in their background. Sometimes I think a question arises: is there enough distance? Is there perspective, right? Does it feel like an experience of, a quite severe episode, let's say, was very recent, and this person may not yet be in a place where they can write about it, right? It probably wouldn't foreclose me from considering them as an applicant, but that question of, how much sort of critical distance does this person have? Are they going to be able to really participate in the community? Those kinds of questions do come up occasionally. So yeah, I would not hesitate to write about it, but to communicate that you are in a place where you feel now ready to approach these topics as an artist.
Yeah, exactly. Claire.
Hi, yes. So I'm actually applying for a different MFA program. I'm applying for a design program, but this has all been super helpful because I'm coming from the sciences, and so I don't have a lot of experience as we have with writing artist statements, etc. I'm writing my personal statement for my application. I'm wondering if there are other things, just other kind of cliches or kind of cheap platitudes, oh, I've been writing since I was in diapers. Other things that come up a lot where you're just like, oh my goodness, not this again. Other kind of things you really do. We've heard a lot of things that you definitely want to read in the application, but are there other things where you're like, we prefer not to, steer away from?
That's a good one.
If I may jump in on this, just in the world of design, I don't really see as many. There's not like a frequently tread path for designers, because a lot of designers come from, you know, visual communication or fine art or something like that. So, you know, I think there's not a whole ton of cliches that one can fall into in that realm.
Okay.
I would say design will save the world. There's a lot of fantasies about that. And
Claire, something, it's not a cliche, but something that does happen often is Faith touched on this early in her talk, is the personal statement or the artist statement as a mere recitation, sort of another CV or resume, right? So you want to think about the statement as a chance to say something that couldn't be said in any other part of the application. So I do think, you know, quite often we do see where somebody will remind us where they went to college, or, you know, they'll tell us information that we've already encountered. And it's like, you want, with every articulation of who you are, you want to present something different, right? Something that we couldn't find embedded elsewhere. I saw a question here about
the visionary scholarship. Maybe
there are so many questions now coming in.
I know, I love it. That's great. That's
Yeah.
I
Do
know
you want to
people
jump on one of these, or let me know if you want to take, if I should take one.
Oh, the visionary scholarship. I haven't served on that yet. So if one of you could take that.
Sure, I can talk about it just a little. So that's really that scholarship, that opportunity is about bringing in people with dynamic voices, perspectives. So whatever that is, life experience, cultural background, I think writing really to and into that. There's a specific spot on the application where you address your qualifications for it. So it's an opportunity to really hone in on what makes you a strong candidate for that particular opportunity. You don't have to apply for it, but if you are interested in it, there's a dedicated spot where you would think about whatever it is that you find would make you a dynamic, different, interesting member of the community.
And I think leadership's built into that too, kind of.
Visionary in all of its all of the myriad, you know, facets of being a visionary, acting, creating visionary art. Jeff, do you have any other particular thoughts on the Visionary Practice Scholarship? So that's our biggest scholarship and definitely worth trying for.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I think, Jasmine, the way you explained it covers it pretty well. You know, this is our former diversity scholarship, and as Jasmine was saying, it's exemplifying how your background has shaped your artistic pathway, how you feel your artistic voice is important for the whole of artistic practice moving forward, because as we all know, art history and so forth has been kind of pigeonholed to a particular pathway, and you know, we are trying to move forward and change the dominant paradigm.
It's purposefully expansive because we want to bring in different voices.
Exactly.
Any other questions in the chat that we didn't get to? And I know we're at time or close to it. It's a few minutes after 8. And I want to also be mindful of Faith's time, but you can always get in touch with me should you have questions about the program at CCA. Follow up with Faith. I'm going to say, Faith, can they follow up with you? by by
Thank
reaching
you.
out. Yeah, and of course, if you have any questions about grad admissions, reach out to Jeff. Where can we read successful statements? I don't have a repository of them. I think, Arena, who is she's still on the call, did a little bit of sleuthing on the interweb. I think that it's hard to find real examples out there, good ones, credible ones. So I had put in the chat some statements by professional writers, so published authors who are writing about this question of why I write. And I think that could be really useful to you. It's not exactly what we're talking about tonight, but I think it's a really great resource for you as you're crafting your statements. Faith, do you have any resources or thoughts on where people could go for real life examples of successful statements?
No, I mean, I know that some larger colleges do have that kind of stuff. And some grantees have, I mean, like with a Fulbright and stuff, you can, with a number of things, you can see what successful statements are. But yeah, I don't have a repository myself.
I have learned a lot reading artist statements of visual artists. I think that they craft, it's part of their practice. They have to, submit these for exhibitions. And so they're often quite adept at writing artist statements, and going online and searching statements by visual artists has also been for me, it's been very instructive. I have a handout if people would like. I've shared it with students in the past. It goes over some of the material that Faith was talking about, but I'm happy to share that if you want to follow up with me by email at jdarsnick@cca.edu. I'm happy to offer you my resource on it. And I can't remember if I've got links to specific artist statements, but it's something else available to you if you want.
I do want that. Can you put your email in the chat? That sounds great.
Absolutely. I think
Faith actually just shared Jasmine's email. jdarsnick.
Yeah, and that's really crafted based on my working with visual artists at CCA. And I have my undergrads go through a process of basically 4 components. What do you make? Why do you make it? How do you make it? And what's the greater context? So I know I said that really fast, but the handout goes through it, extrapolates each of those components, and it's almost like a recipe. You could switch out the elements, but that's how visual artists often present their biographies and visions, is some mix of these 4 components.
So just to be clear, and so you know what I'm asking you for, when I email you, I'm going to say, hey, can I have the handout on writing artist statements?
Writing artist statements, and I will remember.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Well, Faith, thank you so much. As always, you impressed me. You energized me. You should read some of Faith's writing. I think that could be very instructive to folks. Faith has a number of writings. I hope they could go to your website and see some of your personal essays, but she's got knockout personal essays. There's one that ran in Alta magazine, ALTA, where she uses the motif of the volcano to talk about her family and some really explosive family secrets that she found out about. Go to that. If I saw that, Faith, you'd be in.
Yeah. I could join your MFA program. That's great.
And honestly, a lot of people who come into MFA programs wanting to write fiction, they don't read a lot of personal essays. Read personal essays. Read Best American Essays. Go pick up the most recent one, just came out, edited by Vivian Gornick. I mean, that will get you going. It will show you what fine, fierce writing looks like. Bring it on back to us. We'll love it.
Celeste, that's hilarious. All
All
right.
right. Well,
Yay.
have a lovely evening, everyone. Thanks for being here.
And thanks for turning out, everyone. Really
Yeah.
appreciate
Yeah, thank you so much.
it. Great to see you, Celeste.
Good to see you. Thank you all. This was wonderful. Good night.
Of course.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Little giraffe left here.
Just Rebecca.